Every guitarist uses reverb, but the way most guitarists use it is the exact opposite of how studio engineers use it, and that single difference is why your recordings sound washed out, distant, and amateur, while professional records sound huge, clear, and alive. Today, 5 rules that change everything. I'm the Tone Manual. I've spent over 30 years playing in bands, lugging heavy tube amps into sticky clubs, and obsessing over my tone. Look, I'm not an engineer. I'm not a technician. I'm just a guitar player who got tired of my riffs getting totally lost in the mix, so I finally sat down and figured out the physics behind the sound. In today's explainer, we are bridging the gap between the control room and your pedal board.
We're breaking down the 5 specific rules that change everything about your guitar tone, straight from the mixing console. Let's jump right into it.
Rule number 1. Pre-delay is not optional. Most guitarists leave their pre-delay knob sitting at 0. Honestly, half of us don't even know what it does. But engineers, they always add pre-delay. So, what is it? Pre-delay is simply a timer. It's the physical gap of silence between your raw, dry guitar note and when the echo actually starts. When you set it to 0, the echo steps right on top of your pick attack. It instantly blurs the front edge of your note and shoves your guitar straight to the back of the room. In plain terms, you want the dry guitar to hit first so you hear the actual metal string and the plastic pick, and then the reverb follows right behind it. Think of it like a thunderstorm. You see the lightning flash a split second before you hear the crack of the thunder.
That tiny gap of silence is absolutely crucial. We're talking about 20 to 30 milliseconds, which your brain barely even registers as a gap. But that gap is exactly where your guitar's presence lives. You see, when you're playing with a bassist and a loud drummer, that initial pick attack is your only lifeline. It gives the listener a chance to hear the clarity and the attitude of your playing before the wash of the room kicks in. By simply turning up that pre-delay knob just a little bit, your guitar suddenly sounds present, in your face, and alive, rather than distant and muffled. You'll actually feel your pick hitting the strings again.
Moving on to rule number 2, the golden wet-to-dry ratio.
Let's define our terms here real quick. Wet just means the sound of the reverb effect itself, and dry means your raw, unaffected guitar signal coming straight from the amp. When we guitarists set up our pedals, we usually crank that reverb to 40 or maybe even 60% wet. Why? Because we want to hear the shiny new pedal we just bought. We've all been guilty of this. But studio engineers rarely go above 15 to 20% wet on a guitar in a mix. Think of reverb like salt on a really good steak. You don't want to taste just the salt, you want it to enhance the meat. In this case, your dry signal is the meat. You want 85% of the sound hitting the listener's ear to be your actual raw guitar playing.
I know it's hard to dial it back. You want to hear the effect, but the rule here is simple. Reverb should be felt, not heard. It adds physical space around the instrument without removing the punch of your amp. If you're listening to a playback and you can clearly hear the reverb as a distinct effect, it's too loud. Turn it down until you barely notice it's there, and then click the pedal off completely. If your guitar suddenly feels small and dead, boom, you found the exact right spot. It's about building a foundation, not washing away your hard work.
Rule number 3 is a tough one for a lot of players to accept. Stop using hall reverb. You probably use the hall reverb setting because it sounds massive when you're playing alone in your bedroom. A single chord rings out and sounds like an entire symphony. But here's the reality. What works in an empty bedroom will completely ruin a song when the bass and drums kick in. Engineers use plate or small room reverbs for guitars in a mix. A room reverb sounds exactly like what it is, a small physical space with short, quick reflections. A plate reverb simulates an old studio trick where they literally vibrated a large metal sheet. It sounds dense and smooth, but it fades out fast. Hall reverbs, on the other hand, have a massive long tail, and that tail fills up the exact mid-range frequencies, the meaty, middle part of the sound spectrum, where the guitar absolutely needs to live. When you flood that space with a hall tail, the guitar just drowns in the mud. By switching your pedal to a plate or a room setting, you add that necessary space around the notes without cluttering up your tone. The reverb decays fast enough to get out of the way before you hit your next chord. That means your rhythm playing stays tight and punchy instead of turning into a giant blur of noise. You keep the power of your chords, but you still give them room to breathe.
Let's look at rule number 4, high-cut the reverb tail.
Studio engineers always filter the high frequencies out of the reverb tail itself. This is an old trick dating way back to the Abbey Road days in the 1960s. They realized that bright, fizzy echoes distract the ear from the main instrument. A high cut does exactly what it sounds like. It cuts out the high, treble frequencies from the effect. In plain terms, your reverb should physically sound darker than your dry signal. Your dry guitar should have the bite, the string noise, and the sizzle. The reverb should just be a warm, dark shadow sitting right behind it.
If you're looking at a mixing screen, you want to cut everything above 4 to 6 kilohertz on the reverb return. In plain English, you are chopping off all those high, piercing treble frequencies. If your pedal just has a simple tone knob, roll it way back to the dark side. Bright reverb tails compete directly with the guitar's own natural top-end presence and create a smeared, unclear sound. When you leave those highs in, your cymbals, the vocals, and your guitar's bite all start fighting for the same space. When the reverb is dark, the listener's ear easily separates the bright, punchy guitar from the dark, warm room it sits in.
And finally, rule number 5. Reverb goes dead last in your chain.
A lot of guitarists put their reverb before their delay, or worse, right smack in the middle of their distortion pedals. I know it hurts to hear, but this happens all the time when guys are just chaining pedals together on a board without thinking about the physics of the signal path. Engineers place reverb after absolutely everything else. It should be the absolute last thing the signal touches before the amp or the recording interface. Think of it like playing in a real physical room. The sound travels out of your amp speaker, bounces around the walls, and then hits your ears. The room is the final stage of the journey. Your pedal needs to act the same way.
Putting reverb before a distortion pedal gets the echo tail distorted right along with your guitar signal. This magnifies the low-end mud and creates a washed-out, undefined mess that completely ruins your tone. Putting it before a delay pedal just chaotically reverberates the echoes, ruining your rhythmic clarity. The formula is simple. Put your overdrive and distortion first, then your modulation, meaning your swirly effects like chorus or a phaser, then your delays, and put the reverb at the very end of the line. The reverb is the room. It is the space that holds everything else. So here is the question you need to ask yourself next time you plug into your pedal board. Is the way most guitarists use reverb a creative choice or just a habit nobody ever questioned? Stop fighting your mix. Start treating your reverb like a studio engineer does. Add your pre-delay, turn that wet mix down, ditch the massive halls for plates and rooms, darken the tail, and put the pedal at the very end of your chain. Apply these 5 rules from this explainer and take absolute control of your tone.